Harper Audio presents The Secret Wife by Gill Paul, read by Laura Kirman and Thomas Judd.
Prologue. Lake Akanabee, New York State, the 19th of July, 2016. It was 29 hours since Kitty Fisher had left her husband, and in that time she had travelled 3,713 miles. The in-flight magazine had said there were 3,461 miles between London and New York, and the hire car's sat-nav told her she had driven 252 miles since leaving the airport. A whole ocean and half a state lay between her and Tom. She should have been upset, but instead she felt numb. Back in the UK, it was 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon, and she wondered what Tom was doing, then grimaced as she pictured him pottering around the house in his jogging bottoms and T-shirt. He would no doubt have called her closest friends, all innocents, asking if they knew where she was. How long would it take him to work out she had flown to America to look for the lakeside cabin she'd inherited from her great-grandfather? She had been careful not to leave any paperwork behind, so he didn't have the address. Let him stew for a while. It served him right for his infidelity. She shuddered at the word. An involuntary image of the messages on his phone flashing into her brain. She was still in shock. Nothing felt real. Don't think about it. Stop thinking. The woman on the sat-nav was comfortingly sure of herself. In 200 yards, take a left onto Big Brook Road. It felt nice to be told what to do. That's what she needed when the rest of her life was falling apart. But a few minutes later, the voice lady seemed to get it wrong. "You have reached your destination," she said, but all Kitty could see was dense forest lining the road on either side. She drove further, but the voice urged her to turn around. Kitty got out of the car to explore on foot and, peering through the trees, discovered a track overgrown with waist-high grass and hanging branches. She consulted the map that had been sent with the cabin's ownership documents and decided this must be it. The car's paintwork would get scratched if she tried to drive down, so she set off on foot, pushing her way through the thicket. There was a droning of insects and a strong smell of greenness, like lawn cuttings after rain. Before long, she could see the steely glint of Lake Akanabee, with pinpricks of light dancing on the surface. When she reached the shore, she looked around, squinting at her map. The cabin should have been right there. And then she noticed a mound about 12 feet tall, camouflaged by creeping plants. It was 30 years since anyone had lived there, and Kitty was prepared for the cabin to be reduced to a pile of rubble. Instead, it was as if the forest had created a cocoon to protect it from the elements. Weeds wrapped themselves around the foundations, pushed in through broken windows, and formed a carpet over the roof. The entrance was barely visible through a mass of twisted greenery, but the cabin's location, nestled on a gentle slope just yards from the pebbly shore, was stunning. She walked over to look more closely. A jetty sticking out into the lake had long since collapsed, leaving a few forlorn struts. A sapling had grown up through the 4 or 5 steps to the cabin's porch, causing them to buckle and snap, and its roots tangled through the fractured wood like a nest of snakes. But the corrugated steel roof appeared to have stayed watertight, protecting the walls beneath. Concrete foundations, she noted. Treading with care, Kitty climbed onto the porch, where rusty chains hanging from the ceiling and some fractured planks on the floor indicated there had once been a swing seat. She imagined her great-grandfather sitting there, looking out at the view, perhaps with a beer in his hand. Pushing aside the foliage, she reached the cabin door and found it wasn't locked. Inside it was dim and musty, with a smell of damp mushrooms and old wood. Dust motes danced in shafts of light pouring through gaps in the creepers. When her eyes adjusted, Kitty saw there was one large room with a rusty stove, an old iron bed topped by a mouldy mattress, a wooden desk, and heaps of rubbish everywhere, yellowed newspapers, ancient cans of food, and a pair of perished rubber galoshes. She stepped carefully across the room. Through a doorway, there was a bathroom with a stained tub, basin and toilet. A cobweb-covered shaving brush nestled on a shelf. To her astonishment, the toilet
Sample complete. Ready to continue?